Let's go back in time. Nicknames. We were chatting a bit before recording. What was the nickname that we were discussing and who gave it to you?
Yep. Had a high school basketball coach who started calling me old man. I was so stiff. It'd take me so long to warm up compared to other players. I thought I knew I wasn't built well for basketball. I thought I could work my way. So I was just doing crazy workouts from the time I was maybe 9 years old. So by 12, chronic knee pain. So even by high school, I couldn't get low in my legs. So I think during all that puberty time, things weren't forming right because I was so stiff. I wasn't getting into my legs the way I should. Started calling me old man. Yeah.
So we've got old man Patrick in high school. Flash forward, now you're known as Knees Over Toes Guy. So something happened in between those two.
Yep.
What were and we can approach this any number of ways. You could explain why the name, or you could talk about maybe catalyzing moments or findings that set you on the path that led you to become Knees Over Toes Guy.
Absolutely. And as you alluded to on my Instagram, YouTube, it's pinned where this kind of stuff we're talking about, someone can just go look at it and see it visually, like almost in order. So the chronic pains and stiffness, doctors did think around 14, probably something happened I should have had surgery on. Didn't have surgery. Different things started stacking up. By 18, I then did have surgery. Partial kneecap replacement, like part of my kneecap was just floating there. The quad tendon reattached and then had a meniscus transplant. And then it took about a year and a half because I was so extreme, so stiff, I was immobilized and really couldn't even run for like a year and a half. That kind of set off a chain of things. By then, my right knee was hurting worse than my left knee ever had.
Yeah. I mean, that happened when I had my left shoulder surgically reconstructed. After the year and a half it took to finally rehab the left, the right was screaming.
Yeah. So I was in a pretty dark place because considering my right knee hurt worse than my left knee ever had, I'm like, I probably need surgery on the right knee now. And I had gotten from the surgeries and I had stayed on painkillers and my parents didn't know. My girlfriend didn't know. Who's my wife now.
You staying on the painkillers.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just like popping them. And then I stumbled on some stuff from Charles Poliquin, who you had on your podcast.
Yeah, spent a lot of time with Charles back in the day.
And he had various information that was very clear that it was like, no. What we've, in the fitness world, had all been taught, don't let your knee over your toes. He had stuff saying, no, this is actually the athletes, he helps them prevent injury and rehab with training that position.
And just for people who are trying to imagine what this means. So if you were to say, be in a squat position, keeping your shins vertical, where your knees are aligned over your ankles, that would be let's just call it pre-exposure to Poliquin, sacred cow, at least in a lot of the sort of exercise science worlds. Do not let your knees travel over your toes. Right? Keep your shins vertical. So Charles is saying quite the opposite.
Yeah. And good point there. It was totally understandable why that occurred. 1970s, exercise science is becoming a thing in school. And they found that when the knee goes over the toe, then there's more pressure on the knee. So what went into textbooks was showing when you exercise, don't let your knee over your toes. Now for someone to compare, think about stepping down the stairs and stop. You take a step downstairs, stop. You're loading your knee over your toes. Every single step you take downstairs. So when I started studying Charles Poliquin, because of what I had been through, for me, instantly, I knew there was something here. Because I had tried all the mainstream methods of no knees over toes. So the first thing then that I could tell that allowed me to get off the painkillers was dragging a sled backwards. So every step I take, my knee is over my toes. It's almost like if someone walked backward up a hill to rehab rather than going down the hill. And that's actually the progression of the rehab, is walking backwards, trying to add resistance to walking backwards, which is gentler, to then I use a slant board, but you could roll up a towel to elevate your heel. You could start with your heel flat. Like you don't have to even elevate the heel to start, where you actually work on stepping down. So you're actually controlling the motion at your pain-free level of stepping down. Even if I couldn't do a 6-inch step. I could maybe control a couple inches, and you're using high repetitions as if you were a gymnast.
When you say you can only do a couple of inches, can you just paint a picture for what that means?
Let's say you're walking down the stairs. Each stair is probably 6 inches.
Right.
I couldn't control that motion without pain. I had to sort of clunk my way down the stairs, ease up pressure with the upper body. I couldn't control step by step without my knee hurting. But someone can do less than a 6-inch stair. So the walking backward as a warm up, you're getting circulation. We're talking maybe stacking up 100, 200 yards backward, which didn't hurt, and then was getting circulation, getting some strength. So that was what I felt like, okay, I can get off the painkillers now because I have this way of naturally reducing the pain and getting some strength going in a knee pressure position.
And let me just sidebar quickly for folks. I have only in the last handful of years, I'd used sleds a lot, but I was always pushing. And it's only in the last handful of years. And you have met these guys as well, but Nsima Young and Mark Bell.
Yep.
And of course, Mark Bell used to train with who? He was at Westside Barbell.
Yeah.
Louis Simmons. You mentioned his name when we were recording earlier.
Yep.
I have come to appreciate just how incredibly therapeutic this pulling of the sled is, right? Which you could do with a harness around the waist. You could do it with a vest. You could simply hold on to, I guess that's typically how I've seen Mark do it, for instance, where you're effectively just holding on to handles with a strap that attaches you to the sled. For rehabilitation, for prehab, for building in some insurance policy for the knees, it is just incredibly effective, but also so elegant. It's so simple and hard to hurt yourself. Now, of course, talk to your doctor. I don't pretend to be one on the internet.
Yep.
That's all I wanted to say was, personally, I can also vouch for this. Did you come across that through Poliquin?
Yep.
Yeah.
So Charles Poliquin, he was interviewed for this article where he helped an Olympic athlete who wasn't going to be able to compete in the Olympics. And they started going backward with the sled often because he could recover fast. And he was able to get back and actually win a medal at the Olympics. So I'm not advising someone to rush, but that was a unique case where this might be the guy's only chance.
You have a constraint.
Ever. Yeah. So that kind of sold me on it. And then once I was experiencing it, I was like, okay, I can see there's something here. It's not like that solved all my problems. That was enough for me in my state to be willing to get off the painkillers and then start exploring further stuff.
How long did it take you to get off of the painkillers after you started doing the sled work?
I remember after the first week of doing this, I then intentionally got off. That didn't mean all my pain was gone, but it was like I wanted to experience this route and not try to shield the pain anymore. So within a week, I knew, okay, there's something different here of progressing the knee over the toes rather than avoiding the knee over the toes. And this sled at least gave me something. It was hard. I didn't really want to think about any further progressions, but that gave me something I could do, didn't hurt. And to give someone an idea on the safety, we can't say anything is 100% safe, but real numbers at the gym I eventually coached thousands of group training sessions. So it wound up being, I counted like over 100,000 times that I coached people on the sled. No one was ever hurt doing the sled. It could happen. To give you a visual that we actually did, which was, I feel like, the best visual to explain people. My mom is 71. We put 1,000 pounds on the sled.
Okay.
And had her try to drag it backwards. She couldn't budge it, but she was fine.
People are going to be wondering why you would do that to your mom.
I know.
Why did you?
I feel like that actually, more people are like, oh, now I get why it's safe.
I see.
because the 1,000 pounds that she's trying to drag is not bearing down on her.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to drag a weight, it probably has less potential to body build and create that breakdown that turns into new muscle tissue and stuff. But it has more potential for getting into something with safety and without pain.
Mm-hmm.
That was my stepping stone. Charles Poliquin this was before social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't actually see any videos of any of the stuff. I had to really decipher articles. I didn't have spare money to be really trying. I had to self-teach based on information he had put out.
Mm-hmm.
And through my self-experimenting, I was able to get to where I could play basketball really hard without my knees hurting.
What other ingredients were added to the cocktail outside of the backwards sled pulls?
So you got the backward sled pulls, and then it was really clear that he was getting people into a full range of motion squat. And that was also something that growing up my whole life in basketball was like, don't do any deep squats.
Mm-hmm.
Your knee goes over your toes. So it was sort of don't go below 90 degrees and don't let your knee over your toes were the two prevailing things. And I went to 6, 8, 10 trainers. So this is not just like maybe that was bad luck that none of those trainers knew differently. It does seem like it was the prevailing way. And having been on basketball teams now, having coached, I could safely estimate that 99% of basketball teams don't squat with a full range of motion.